Title: The Unseen Path, Nia's Journey of Faith. Chapter 1. The Weight of Expectations. Nia sat at her desk, her fingers flying across the keyboard as she processed another batch of billing reports. The fluorescent lights flickered, casting a dim glow over the office, but it didn't faze her. As a Level 3 billing analyst, she had grown used to the humdrum of her daily tasks. Yet her heart longed for more. For months, she had been praying for a promotion, asking God to elevate her out of this stagnant role. But with every passing day, her doubts grew. She glanced across the room at her 4 co-workers, Joe, Karen, Chris, and Jenny, each of them locked in their own world of work. But Nia knew better. She could feel their eyes on her, sense the whispers behind her back. They hated how good she was at her job, and it showed. Joe was the worst, constantly undermining her during meetings. Karen, always sharp with her words, had a knack for passive-aggressive comments. Chris was quieter, but his disdain came through in his subtle condescension. And Jenny, well, Jenny just ignored her, as if Nia didn't even exist. Nia sighed, her faith wavering. Could she really rise above this hostile environment? Was God truly listening to her prayers? Chapter 2. A Word from the Prophet. It was a Sunday morning when Nia found herself sitting in the back pew of her church, head bowed in silent prayer. The message had been on trust and faith, but her mind kept drifting back to work. The promotion felt further away than ever, and the weight of her co-workers' jealousy was growing unbearable. Just as the service ended, the prophet who had been visiting the church approached her. His eyes held a knowing look, as if he could see right into her soul. "Sister Nia," he said softly, "you've been praying for a promotion, haven't you?" Her heart skipped a beat. How could he know? She nodded, her voice catching in her throat. "Yes, I have, but nothing seems to be happening." The prophet smiled, his words calm and assured. "The promotion you seek is not where you are. God has something greater in store for you, but it's not at your current job." The words hit her like a jolt. Not at her current job? How could that be? She needed this promotion, especially with the way things were going at the office. But as she left the church, the prophet's words echoed in her heart. Chapter 3. The Hostility of the Office. Monday morning came and Nia walked into the office with a renewed sense of hope, even though she wasn't sure what the prophet's words truly meant. She sat down at her desk, determined to give her best effort. But as the day progressed, the tension in the office grew palpable. Joe was the first to strike. "You know, Nia," he said during a team meeting, "I think you made an error on that last report. It's not up to standard." His voice was laced with condescension, his eyes daring her to defend herself. Nia felt the heat rise in her chest, but she kept her voice steady. "I double-checked that report, Joe. Everything is in order." Karen snickered from the corner of the room. "Maybe it's time you took a break, Nia. You've been overdoing it, haven't you?" Nia's jaw clenched. It was always like this. Little jabs meant to undermine her confidence. Chris leaned back in his chair, smirking. "She's just showing off again. You know how she is." Jenny, as usual, said nothing, simply rolling her eyes before going back to her work. It was as if her silence was louder than any insult. But Nia remained composed. She reminded herself of the prophet's words. This wasn't her final destination. Chapter 4. A Divine Encounter. Weeks passed, and despite her prayers, nothing seemed to change at work. Nia's hope for the promotion was beginning to fade, and she found herself questioning her path. It was on one of these particularly difficult days when she decided to treat herself to takeout from a local Italian restaurant. As she waited for her food, she noticed a man sitting alone at a table, his brow furrowed in thought. He was well-dressed, with an air of authority about him. After a few moments, the man looked up and caught her eye. "Excuse me, miss," he said, his voice smooth but tired. "Would you care to join me for a drink?" Nia hesitated. She didn't know this man, and she didn't drink alcohol. But something deep in her spirit urged her to say yes. "I don't drink," she said cautiously, "but I'll join you for a pop." The man smiled, gesturing to the seat across from him. "Fair enough. My name's Michael." As the evening progressed, Michael began to open up, talking about the challenges he was facing as the owner of a multi-million-dollar company. Nia listened intently, offering suggestions here and there. To her surprise, Michael seemed genuinely interested in her thoughts, often pausing to consider her advice. Before she left, Michael handed her his business card. "You've given me a lot to think about, Nia. If you ever need anything, don't hesitate to call." She thanked him, unsure of what to make of the encounter. Little did she know, this meeting would change her life forever. Chapter 5. The Unexpected Turn. The next few weeks at work were as tense as ever, but Nia carried the memory of her conversation with Michael with her. She hadn't expected much to come of it. After all, he was just a man she met by chance in a restaurant. But one afternoon, everything shifted. Her boss called an emergency meeting. The company was being sold, effective immediately. Panic swept through the office, and her co-workers, who had once looked down on her, were now as fearful as she was. Joe, Karen, Chris, and Jenny exchanged worried glances. What would happen to their jobs? But as the details of the sale were revealed, Nia's heart skipped a beat. The new owner was none other than Michael. He had bought the company. Chapter 6. The Promotion She Never Expected. When Michael walked into the office a week later, there was no mistaking the authority he carried. He greeted the staff warmly, but his eyes lit up when he saw Nia. "Nia, can I speak with you privately?" he asked. Nia nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. They walked into a quiet conference room, and Michael smiled. "I've been thinking about that conversation we had. You gave me advice that I believe can help transform this company." He paused, then continued. "I'd like to promote you to vice president." The words hung in the air. Nia blinked in disbelief. VP? Her? After all her prayers, all the doubts, and all the struggles with her coworkers, this was the answer? God had blessed her in a way she never could have imagined. Chapter 7. Exceeding Expectations. As Nia settled into her new role as vice president, she couldn't help but reflect on how far she had come. Her former co-workers, Joe, Karen, Chris, and Jenny, were now reporting to her. The irony wasn't lost on her, but instead of seeking revenge, she extended grace. After all, God had led her down a path she never expected, and his blessings had exceeded all her prayers. Over time, Nia realized that the prophet's words were true. Her future wasn't tied to her previous role. It was in the divine encounters, the unexpected meetings, and the unfolding of God's plan in ways she couldn't have imagined. Nia's faith grew stronger with each passing day as she embraced the abundance that God had promised all along. Subscribe today and let faith lead the way. Come back each week for more faith-based stories. Thank you for listening.